The old woman's weathered hands trembled as she accepted the check, $5 million, more money than she had ever imagined seeing in her lifetime. Tears streamed down her face as she looked up at the man in the expensive suit, the same boy she had once given a single rose and her last sandwich to 30 years ago at this very train station. "You remembered," she whispered, her voice breaking. "All this time, you remembered." If this story of unexpected kindness returning tenfold touched your heart, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more inspiring true stories that remind us how small acts of compassion can change lives forever. Margaret Collins had been selling flowers at Westbrook Station for over 40 years. At 78, her body ached with arthritis, but each morning she would carefully arrange her buckets of fresh blooms beside the busy platform where commuters rushed past, rarely sparing her more than a glance. The station had changed over the decades, modernized, expanded, filled with chain coffee shops and convenience stores, but Margaret remained, a constant fixture with her faded floral apron and gentle smile. Few people knew that Margaret had once dreamed of becoming a botanist. Life had other plans when her husband died young, leaving her with 3 small children to raise alone. The flower stand became her lifeline, a way to keep food on the table while staying connected to her passion for beautiful blooms. Her children were grown now, scattered across the country with families of their own. They called when they could and visited on holidays, but Margaret's days were mostly spent alone. The morning routine never varied. She would wake before dawn, prepare her modest breakfast, and catch the first bus to the wholesale flower market where she carefully selected each stem. By 6:30 a.m., she would be at her spot near Platform 3, arranging roses, carnations, and whatever seasonal flowers caught her eye that day. Most days, she earned just enough to cover expenses and set a little aside. Some days were better than others. It was on a particularly difficult Tuesday in October that Margaret first met the boy. The rain had been relentless, keeping customers away and soaking through her thin raincoat. Sales had been abysmal, and she was considering packing up early when she noticed him, a teenager, perhaps 16 or 17, huddled against the wall of the station. His clothes were worn but clean, and there was something in his eyes that spoke of determination despite obvious hunger. "Are you all right, dear?" Margaret called out, beckoning him closer. The boy approached cautiously. "Yes, ma'am. Just waiting for the train." Margaret noticed he kept checking his pockets, counting and recounting what appeared to be a small amount of change. His stomach growled audibly, and he looked away, embarrassed. "When's the last time you ate?" she asked gently. "Yesterday morning," he admitted after a moment's hesitation. "But I'm fine. I need to save what I have for the train ticket." Margaret didn't hesitate. She reached into her bag and pulled out the sandwich she had packed for her own lunch. "Take this," she said, pressing it into his hands. "And this too." She selected a perfect red rose from her bucket and added it to his hands. "I can't pay for these," the boy protested. "The sandwich is because no one should go hungry," Margaret explained. "And the rose? That's for luck. You look like you're heading somewhere important." The boy's eyes filled with tears. "I have a job interview in the city. It's my only chance to make something of myself. My mom." His voice broke. "She's sick, and I need to help with the bills." "Then you take that rose to your interview," Margaret said firmly. "Hold your head high. You're going to do just fine." The boy thanked her profusely before boarding his train, carefully tucking the rose into his jacket pocket. Margaret watched him go, hoping her small kindness might make a difference. Then she returned to her flowers, the encounter soon fading into the background of countless interactions over the years. Life continued its steady rhythm. Seasons changed, years passed. Margaret grew older, her movements slower, her sales declining as newer, trendier flower shops opened in the renovated station. By her 78th birthday, she was barely making enough to justify the early mornings and long hours standing on feet swollen with arthritis. But what else would she do? The flower stand was her life, her purpose. It was a Wednesday morning when everything changed. Margaret was arranging a fresh delivery of tulips when a sleek black car pulled up outside the station. She paid it little mind, expensive cars weren't uncommon in this part of town. But then a tall man in an impeccably tailored suit approached her stand, studying her with an intensity that made her straighten her hunched shoulders. "Margaret Collins?" he asked, his voice deep and somehow familiar. "Yes," she replied cautiously. "Can I help you with some flowers today?" The man smiled, a warm, genuine expression that transformed his serious face. "You already helped me, Mrs. Collins. Many years ago. You probably don't remember, it was a rainy day, and you gave a hungry boy a sandwich and a rose for luck." Margaret stared at him, memories slowly surfacing. "The boy with the job interview?" He nodded, emotion flickering across his face. "That boy was me. James Harrington." The name registered immediately. James Harrington was a well-known entrepreneur, his face occasionally appearing in business magazines and local news. He had built a technology empire from nothing, his company now worth billions. "You." Margaret's voice faltered. "You did well for yourself, then." James laughed softly. "I did. And it started that day. I was ready to give up, you know. I had spent my last dollars on that train ticket, hadn't eaten in almost 24 hours. I was certain I would fail the interview, I was too hungry to think straight, too desperate to appear confident." He reached into his jacket pocket and carefully withdrew something wrapped in tissue paper. When he unfolded it, Margaret gasped. Inside was a dried, pressed red rose, preserved despite the decades. "Your sandwich gave me the strength to think clearly," James continued. "But it was this rose that truly changed everything. When I walked into that interview, I was terrified. Then I remembered what you said about holding my head high. I took the rose from my pocket, set it on the desk, and told the interviewer it was a gift from someone who believed in me when no one else did. That simple gesture changed the entire tone of the meeting. They hired me on the spot." Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "All these years, you kept it?" "It's been my lucky charm through every major decision," James confirmed. "But I never knew your name until recently. I've been searching for you for years, asking around the station whenever I passed through. Last month, someone finally recognized my description of the flower lady." Margaret was overwhelmed. "I'm just glad things worked out for you, dear. That's reward enough for an old woman like me." James shook his head firmly. "No, Mrs. Collins. I'm here to do more than say thank you. I want to repay your kindness." Over the next hour, as commuters rushed past and Margaret's flowers remained largely unsold, James shared his story. After that first job, he had worked tirelessly, saving every penny. His mother had recovered with proper medical care, and he had put himself through night school, eventually developing software that revolutionized supply chain management. His company had grown exponentially, and he now employed thousands. "But I never forgot where I came from," he explained. "Or the people who helped me along the way. Especially you." Margaret listened, amazed at how her small gesture had played such a pivotal role in this man's journey. When James finally came to the point of his visit, she could hardly believe her ears. "I want to establish a foundation in your name," he said. "The Margaret Collins Kindness Initiative. It will provide educational scholarships for underprivileged youth and support elderly individuals who, like you, continue working well past retirement age because they have no choice." He handed her an envelope. Inside was a check for $5 million. "This is your personal gift," James explained as Margaret stared at the check in shock. "No strings attached. Buy yourself a comfortable home, travel if you wish, never worry about bills again. The foundation will be separate, I've already endowed it with $50 million to start." Margaret's hands trembled as she accepted the check, $5 million, more money than she had ever imagined seeing in her lifetime. Tears streamed down her face as she looked up at the man in the expensive suit, the same boy she had once given a single rose and her last sandwich to 30 years ago at this very train station. "You remembered," she whispered, her voice breaking. "All this time, you remembered. How could I forget?" James replied softly. "You showed kindness without expectation of return. You saw value in me when I couldn't see it in myself." In the days that followed, Margaret's life transformed. With James's help, she found a lovely cottage near a botanical garden where she could indulge her lifelong love of plants without the physical strain of running her stand. The foundation was established with great fanfare, and Margaret found herself suddenly in the spotlight, interviewed by local news stations and even a national morning show. "I never expected any of this," she told the reporters who asked about her reaction to James's generosity. "I gave that sandwich and rose because it was the right thing to do. We all have moments where we can choose kindness or indifference. I just chose kindness." The Margaret Collins Kindness Initiative quickly gained momentum. James ensured that Margaret was involved in decision-making, valuing her insight and compassion. Together, they established programs that identified promising students who needed financial support, as well as elderly workers struggling to make ends meet. 1 year after their reunion, Margaret stood beside James at the opening of the first Margaret Collins Community Center, a place where people of all ages could gather, learn, and support one another. The center featured a magnificent greenhouse where Margaret taught botany classes to children and seniors alike, sharing her knowledge and passion with a new generation. "You've given me purpose again," she told James privately after the ribbon-cutting ceremony. "That's worth more than all the money." James smiled, the successful businessman momentarily resembling that hungry teenager again. "You gave me purpose when I had none. I'm just returning the favor." As word of their story spread, something remarkable began to happen. People started sharing their own experiences of random kindness, small gestures that had made profound differences in their lives. The hashtag Margaret Effect trended on social media, with thousands posting about acts of kindness they had received or given. Margaret's flower stand at Westbrook Station remained, though she no longer needed to work there. Instead, it became a symbol, staffed by volunteers who gave away free flowers attached to cards encouraging recipients to perform their own acts of kindness. The station that had once been a place of hurried indifference became known for its atmosphere of warmth and community. On Margaret's 80th birthday, James organized a celebration that brought together hundreds of people whose lives had been touched by the foundation. Her children and grandchildren, who now lived comfortably thanks to her newfound security, surrounded her with love. Former recipients of foundation scholarships shared stories of how their lives had changed. Elderly individuals who had been able to retire with dignity thanks to the foundation's support expressed their gratitude. As Margaret looked out at the sea of faces, she remembered the countless mornings she had stood at her flower stand, feeling invisible to the rushing crowds. Now, her simple act of kindness had created ripples that continued to spread, touching lives she would never even know about. "I was just one person doing one small thing," she said when asked to give a speech. But that's how change happens. Not through grand gestures, but through small moments of humanity. We all have the power to be that change in someone's life. James stood at the back of the room, watching the woman who had changed his life receiving the recognition she deserved. The dried rose, now preserved in a glass frame, hung prominently in his office as a daily reminder that success wasn't measured by wealth but by the lives you touched along the way. As the years passed, Margaret's health eventually began to decline, but her spirit remained as vibrant as ever. She spent her final years surrounded by flowers and friends, watching the foundation grow and flourish under James's careful guidance. When she passed peacefully in her sleep at 85, the entire city mourned. The funeral was attended by thousands, many bringing single roses in tribute to her legendary act of kindness. James delivered the eulogy, his voice steady despite his grief. "Margaret taught us that kindness is never wasted," he said. "Even when we think our actions are small or insignificant, they can change the course of someone's life. She gave me a sandwich when I was hungry and a rose when I needed courage. In return, I gave her financial security. But the true exchange was much deeper. We gave each other purpose, connection, and the knowledge that we mattered. After the service, James announced an expansion of the foundation, including international scholarships and elder care programs that would carry Margaret's legacy forward. The flower stand at Westbrook Station was permanently preserved, becoming a memorial where people left flowers and notes about kindnesses they had received or given. 10 years after Margaret's passing, James stood at that same flower stand, now a distinguished man in his 60s. He watched as commuters paused in their rush, many taking a moment to leave a flower or take one, continuing the cycle of giving that Margaret had begun decades ago. A young woman approached, hesitant. "Are you him?" she asked. "The boy with the rose?" James nodded, smiling. "I am. My grandmother received help from your foundation," she explained. "She was able to retire from cleaning houses at 72 because of you. She told me to look for the man who stands by the flower memorial sometimes, to thank him." "The thanks belongs to Margaret," James replied. "I was just the messenger." The young woman shook her head. "No, it belongs to both of you. My grandmother always said that kindness is a partnership. One person gives, another receives, and both are changed by the exchange." As she walked away, James reflected on the truth of those words. His life had been transformed by a sandwich and a rose, but the real transformation had come from recognizing the power of that moment and choosing to amplify it rather than simply being grateful and moving on. The legacy of Margaret Collins continued to grow, not just through the foundation that bore her name, but through the countless individuals who had been inspired by her story to look around and ask, "Who needs my kindness today?" In train stations, offices, schools, and homes around the world, people made different choices because they had heard about an old woman who sold flowers and a hungry boy who never forgot her kindness. And so, the simple act of giving a sandwich and a rose to a stranger continued to change the world, one heart at a time, proving that no act of kindness, however small, is ever wasted. It simply waits, like a seed planted in fertile soil, for the right moment to bloom.